So I'm going to be brief because I want to turn it over to these experts here. Extraterrestrials have been a part of our life for eons. Long before recorded history, there was something here that established this planet that we call Earth and its living entities. It is the contention that we are karmic-bound souls coming here from perhaps many aspects of creation and reality itself. Perhaps the planet was seeded. That's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, about where do we come from? What is the origin of what's going on here? Who are these visitors, the Sirens, the Pleiadians, various other, the famous little gray guys, etc. You're going to hear some myths and misconceptions about what's going on, so we can hopefully dispel some of the mysteries of this particular science. Also, after 45 minutes worth of these researchers, we're going to take 45 minutes worth of questions. We want this to be an interactive workshop, so you too can share your experience, and maybe we can have a look at that, because that benefits us all. Extraterrestrials are one of the most uncomfortable subjects to talk about. Your government doesn't want to talk about it. All of the people in the Congress wish it would just go away. We don't know what it is. There are sightings each and every year, and it's increasing exponentially throughout Canada, North America, Europe, and Asia. We don't really know who these people are or what they truly want, but we do think that for some reason they are here watching the consciousness of humanity and perhaps is guiding us into what I would consider the big picture. At some point, perhaps we're even going to graduate. So we're going to find out a little bit about that today. We're going to allow each one of our panelists to talk about 7 minutes each to showcase their work and what is significant, what it tells us, and why it's important to us and how it affects you. So leading right off from my left, Jason Martell, one of the best researchers in the country. Take it away.
Thank you, Robert. Good evening, everyone. And great, I get to be the lucky final stone here. So. My research has culminated in about a little over a decade now. I'm almost 32. And when I was in college, I tangentially came across the idea that there were structures on Mars, a face, and pyramids. And I was pretty skeptical about this, just being a normal college student, no knowledge of ufology whatsoever. So I started to do my own independent approach into these structures to find out answers, and contacted one of the principal scientists in charge of a lot of the imaging that we currently do around Mars. His name is Dr. Mike Malin with Malin Space Science Systems in San Diego, where I was attending college. And when I asked Dr. Mike Malin about the structures on Mars, the face and the pyramids, he was very outright in saying that these are just natural sand and weather eroded structures, nothing anomalous to see here. So that really sparked my interest, and I was able to find 5, 10, 15 other peer-level review scientists that might not work at NASA, but held the PhDs in image analysis and satellite data to show that these structures did merit further study. So, let alone structures on another planet, this started to make me realize that we have structures all over the Earth here, megalithic structures, that let alone on another planet, we have things here that we're still trying to figure out, from the pyramids in Giza to all the South American ruins of Machu Picchu, Pumapuku, Tiwanaku. It goes on and on. And so what I've really tried to focus on is, where do we come from? What is the most ancient civilization that we have record of? And kind of take it from there as a record of chronology to explain how we got to where we are now. And this ended me up with looking into the most ancient culture we have, which is known as Sumer. Today's modern-day Iraq, 6,000 years ago, was called other preceding cultures, Mesopotamia, Babylon. But the first culture to come up in southern Iraq was called Sumer. And this is a very amazing civilization. They still teach in high school and colleges that the Sumerian civilization, right out of the Stone Age, was invented over 100 of the first needed for civilization to take place, meaning they were the first ones to invent writing, mathematics, systems of laws, courts, judges, agriculture. Many of the sciences and things that we still use today came from Sumerian understandings. And the kicker of this information, of why this ties into ufology, is that the Sumerians and their system of writing, which was called cuneiform script, was done on clay and then fired up into stoves and turned into stone tablets. Clay into stone tablets. And so we still have many of their artifacts left from this first culture. And the reason why this is such an interesting tale is many of the tablets and scriptures that they've left us in stone form unchanged directly parallel the Hebrew and English New Testament. So we have all of these tales in a Sumerian version that are thousands of years before the Hebrew or the English version recorded in stone. So, as an example, one of these is called the Flood Tablet, and it's held in the British Museum. And it's a very interesting story of how a Sumerian man is chosen by a Sumerian god. They called their gods the Anunnaki. That simply just means those who from heaven come to earth. And it's a direct parallel of how Noah was chosen by God to build an ark, landed on Mount Ararat, send out the bird. Same story told in a Sumerian version recorded in stone thousands of years before the Hebrew or the English version. So some of the more interesting aspects about the Sumerian knowledge base is if you were to ask a Sumerian man, well, how do you know all this? Where did you learn all this information? And they say, everything we know, we were taught by the Anunnaki. And again, that term meaning those who from heaven come to earth. The Sumerians very specifically said where these beings come from. They didn't just say it was heaven or somewhere up in the sky. They said their gods, the Anunnaki, came from another planet within our own solar system, which they called Nibiru. And that simply just meant planet of the crossing. They symbolized this in the very early part of their culture as just a glowing cross in the sky, way before Christianity and the Jesus on the cross. Another interesting similarity. So a lot of the information that the Sumerians possessed as far as saying our gods, the Anunnaki, come from another planet within our own solar system starts to really up the equation when we apply our own knowledge of science and technology today. We're able to test many of the Sumerian artifacts and scriptures that show us their advanced knowledge of astronomy and how they tracked the stars over hundreds of years. They could tell you 50 years in advance on one specific day there would be a solar eclipse. So someone would know 50 years in advance who could read this information on what day astronomical events would take place. So aside from citing all of the outer planets that we know of accurately, they also included this additional planet, which we call the 12th planet. Now, in our own modern search for planets in our solar system, advances in infrared technology and imaging in space have led us to believe that there's something beyond Pluto. They label it the 10th planet, a planet X. Now, the Sumerians counted 12 planets because they count the nine we know of, plus our sun, our moon, and then this additional planet where the gods came from, Nibiru. So they have all of this astronomical information, which confirms what they're saying as far as their validity to tracking astronomical movements and knowing the distance between the planets. However, when it comes to this additional planet saying their gods came from this planet, science isn't yet able to accurately, accept the idea of extraterrestrials. So in the early 1900s, when we start doing excavations in, in Iraq and pulling out all these artifacts, archaeologists see all these depictions of what they called birdmen. A depiction of the Anunnaki is simply what we would see in the Bible as an angel, but more of like with a bird-like structure. So they have all of these depictions of the Anunnaki and specifically stated that they came from this planet Nibiru. And our own modern search today has detected that something is causing an effect on the outer planets. What they initially called it was a perturbation. All the planets are being pulled in a certain way, which led them to think that there's still some large body beyond Pluto that they haven't detected. So with our own modern science today, we are now looking into this information what the Sumerians provided for this ancient planet X in Nibiru, the home world of the Anunnaki, and trying to look at this with a fresh new eye through technology because, again, if you're an ancient man living in a clay hut and using stone tools, things that were described by the ancients without the use of technology, understanding of technology, come into a much more broader spectrum for what we see today and how people report the same things of unexplained things happening in the sky. But with our knowledge of technology, we don't call them gods anymore. We call them extraterrestrials. So it's a very interesting parallel to look at these ancient cultures and all the recorded stories, not just the Sumerians, which I focus on, being the first, but all these ancient cultures have record stories of beings, their gods, coming down and having interaction with living man. So I think it's very possible, well, I should say, I hope that within our lifetime, these beings will be, I will say, allowed back to interact with us. My own personal belief is that Earth is possibly on quarantine, and the reason why we don't see interaction with the beings that have been here throughout history is we're now at a level of technology where our atmosphere, our Earth, is protected, maybe by extraterrestrials, but possibly by our own technology. And we'll see what happens, I guess, in the next few years of if anything's going to come to a head. But it's definitely interesting to look in the past where we came from to look where we're going in the future. Thank you.